I'm Eric from Longbox Review.
I'm Peter from the Daily Rios, and this is episode 13 of the Legion Project podcast. Hey everybody, we are back.
Woo!
We are back after a short little hiatus that the listeners don't know about, but we do.
Right. Peter and I were just talking before we started recording that I noted that it had been almost 2 months to the day that he and I last spoke about the Legion Project podcast and its various incarnations, and that's a slight hint towards something that's coming. Although I guess it's not really a hint, Peter, is it? Because we already announced it, didn't we?
Yeah, we already announced it. By the time, as we record, our special supplemental episode hasn't been released. But I imagine, if I can get off my butt, we'll have that released. Well, they have to, because they have to listen to that one before they can listen.
They
to this
do.
one. So
that's
yeah.
right. That's
so they
right.
already know what we're talking about.
It might even be, depending on Peter's schedule, it might even be just in time a stocking stuffer, a holiday gift to the listeners.
There you go. No pressure.
Yeah, right. How do you feel about wrapping, Peter?
Oh, I use newspaper.
Seriously? Really?
Yep. I don't give one. Nope. I don't spend any money on wrapping paper.
Wow.
Nope. You're going to tear it off anyway.
That's what exactly. Yeah, very, very pragmatic of you.
Yeah.
How does Erin feel about this?
Well, I mean, of course, she works for a retail place that is all about gifts and cards, and wrapping and stuff like that. So she has wrapping, and but no, she's all about the wrapping, but not me. No, It is what it is, and sometimes I'll get creative and I'll try to use the comic strips, especially for like to get stuff for like the CGS guys or whatever, or even my family. I think. And they always know who it's from. So
I was just thinking I should try and find in the back issue bins those old Wednesday comics that DC put out several years ago.
Oh yeah,
because it wasn't newsprint, but it was close to it. It was something like that. But that'd be the closest thing to actually having newspaper like comic book stuff.
That was such a good series.
It was. It really was.
See, now you're going to make me want to read that again.
Now we got to get through the Legion project first.
That's right. We do.
One project at a time, Peter. Come on.
One project at a time. So we have a couple of things to talk about up front. Some news, some collections coming down the pike, and maybe even a contest. We're getting a little too professional, Eric. I don't like it.
Next thing you know, we'll have sponsors, Peter.
Oh, no.
No, I doubt that very much.
Yeah. Sponsored by Interlac. Sponsored by Kono Juice.
Oh, okay. You just gave me an idea to do something, Peter.
Oh, great.
So what is it you were referring to?
What do you want to start with first? You want to start with the contest? The news? What excites you the most about all that stuff?
Well, since you just brought it up, contest will perk up anybody's ears. So let's go to that.
Okay, so it's not really a major contest, but anyway, I came across an inexpensive trade of the 2007 version of Legion of the Superheroes and Eye for an Eye, collecting the first 7 issues, I think, of the Baxter run, at a just a little discount place, and I was like, oh, look at this. This is great. This is stuff that, I don't need. I'm not one to necessarily always double dip It has the first 6 issues. So this is the big Legion of Superheroes, Legion of Supervillains war that we talked about. And it also includes issue 6, which has the spotlight on Lightning Lass. It has an introduction written in 2007 by Paul Levitz. And in the back, it has really nice recolored entries from Who's Who on the Legion of Superheroes, the Legion of Supervillains, and Karate Kid. So it's that trade paperback paper stock that is, it's not newsprint, but it's a little more, it's grainy. It feels, it's not glossy paper, you know. And it's nice. It's a nice little, you know, edition of the first opening arc that we covered. So I thought this could be nice to give away to a listener, and then that way, if they've never read it, but they're listening to our episodes, they could read it.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I was just looking this book up on Amazon, and yeah, as you said, it's the 2007 version, and there's a note down here that says rare book. So, although you can apparently get it for $20 from somewhere.
Wow. Yeah,
but here it's free.
That's right. Original cover price was $17.99. Rare, I guess, because they did this one and they did a second volume, and then later they like reissued the first one again, I think, because this has the old DC logo with the 1 star swooshing around.
Mm-hmm. The best logo.
Yeah, the one that they kicked off, shortly after Infinite Crisis, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not the Bullet; it's like the refurbished Bullet, I guess. But yeah, so we're gonna make it way, way simple. All you have to do is send either Eric or myself an email. And somewhere in the body of the email say, I want to win the Legion trade, or some variation of that. We will take all those emails, print them out, put them in a hat, and pick one name, and you win. That's it. That is the contest. Whee!
It's pretty simple.
Pretty simple. If I had a planetary chance machine, I would stick all your names on some planets.
Oh, there's got to be something like that online, Peter.
The first one to hit somebody, they would win. No, just that simple.
No. We got to do this. We got to figure out a way to somehow throw something at people and hit them to be the winner. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Though I'd really want to do it.
This way, it gives us a little bit of it's less work for us more than anything. Less work for the listeners, and that way it's not a first come first serve kind of thing. And we don't exactly know when this episode is going to air, but how much time should we give it? Like I don't know, 3 weeks after it airs.
3 weeks? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That should give people enough time to listen.
We'll announce I don't know. It depends on our recording schedule. I was going to say announce it on the next episode, but I don't know if that's going to be true.
Right. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how we go. We're dealing
a future episode for sure.
Yeah. We're dealing with Christmas and the New Year and all the stuff. But yeah, I think that'll be cool. That'll be fun. If you're someone that still doesn't mind to have paper in your house, we'll send that to you free. And there you go.
That was a very cool find, Peter. I'm glad you found that.
Yeah.
I've actually been looking for a copy of that trade for years.
Put your name in.
No. What's that legalese that you always hear?
Right.
Family and family members are not allowed to
right
to put their name in the hat. But I know they reissued it. I don't know, a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
as you said, and I seriously thought about getting it. But Peter, you said something to me. I think it was on Twitter, but you said something to me about double dipping. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I really don't need. although I find myself doing that a lot anyway. I just got in the trade collection of All Star Superman, the most recent one that they released. So
Oh, wow.
Some books I for some reason I feel like I have to get them in trade as well.
Well, that's a damn good segue to our next little bit of news.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one for me. I got to decide what I'm going to do with this one.
Yeah, do you want to talk about this?
Well, you brought it to my attention, but apparently, and I've been meaning to ask you how you found this out. Are you trolling Amazon? Is that what you're doing?
No, I think it was through Twitter. Like some of the people that I follow that are hardcore fans, all of a sudden this news started to get out there.
Yeah. So speaking of trades, apparently next year, July I think is the release date for this thing. But they're gonna collect the first. Oh, I don't know. Did I write this down here?
First 12 issues plus an annual.
Oh, there it is. I have the link. Yeah. Of the 5 year later Legion run. So Legion of Superheroes 5 years later, Volume 1 hardcover, available July 16th, 2019, according to Amazon, that you can get for a mere $49.99 from Amazon. So that's pretty cool. I've been waiting forever for the 5 year later run to be collected. Because we've talked about. I think we've talked about this before on the show, but definitely just between us, how there seems to be less of a appreciation by DC and maybe some of the fandom out there for that run. Although you and I particularly like it.
Absolutely. I mean, this podcast was created because of that series. Even though we started with the Baxter run, our initial discussions, I'm pretty sure, was because we wanted to do the 5 years later, but we thought it might be too dense to just jump right in. And not like the Baxter run hasn't been covered on podcasts before. It has, but I thought, we felt like this could be a good way to get into the 5 years later Legion, especially because you were a little bit more unfamiliar with this run. But it really is the 5 years later that kind of was the impulse for this podcast. That's
true, yeah.
Do you think it's too expensive? Do you think this is the right format?
$50 a hardcover. I don't know. For something like I said that doesn't seem to be as well loved by the company, or I'm not using the right phrase. What is it I'm trying to say here?
Referenced.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. It's very much kind of shoved aside, shoved under the carpet, so to speak, when it comes to people talking about the Legion run. They always go back to, well, basically the Baxter run. When Jeff Johns brought the Legion back in that Superman story. He brought back versions of the Legion that existed during this time period that you and I are talking about. And they totally ignored the 5 years later stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's certainly a series that is well loved among creators. I want to say Gabriel Hardman or Jeff Lemire have talked about it on Twitter. I'm pretty sure somebody at a convention, a creator or somebody, we started really digging into just talking about that run. I'm a little worried it's a little expensive, that it doesn't get the pre-orders, and hopefully they don't cancel it.
Exactly. Yes.
But 2019 is the 30th anniversary because it started in 1989. So my hope is that it's going to get enough buzz and we get more volumes because it's only 12 issues, like I said. So, and that run goes up to, well, I mean, if you really want to be sort of a purist, it's kind of like the first 38 issues plus annuals. Although it ran up to 0 Hour, which was around 50 something, I think. The true 5 years later Keith Giffen part, the beer bombs, the one that wraps up the larger story, it kind of wraps up in issue 38, and then it continues. But I feel like the first 38 are like the best of that run.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna get it. We talked about double dipping, but I'm gonna get it.
Well, I feel like I kind of have to now, based on what you just said about the potential for them to cancel it if they don't get enough pre-orders.
Right. So everybody order this book.
Yeah, exactly. And then, down the road, hopefully, if the sales were good, they'll issue trades, cheaper versions for people to experience the 5 years later run.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Zero Hour, Peter, you brought up something you wanted to bring up regarding the description of this book.
Yeah, whoever did the solicit isn't doing their homework, because they say here, following the events of Zero Hour, in which DC's timelines were streamlined, the 30th century heroes of the Legion of Superheroes are reunited once more. But then it says, following the events of the late 1980s, or following the events of the late 1980s event, Zero Hour. It's like, whoa. You're all kerfluffled here.
Yeah, somebody's definitely messed up here.
Yeah. Zero Hour wasn't until 1994. This series started in 1989. It is not spun out of Zero Hour. My bigger worry was then, oh my God, are they going to reprint the Zero Hour reboot series? And we get this package and we're like, no, it's the wrong one. But no, they do mean the 5 years later. They just have a bonehead who wrote that up. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when Peter told me about this, I wrote back an email joking that they got their 5 years later stuff messed up in their head because Zero Hour was 5 years after the start of this run. So there you go.
Yeah,
I guess I'm too nice to these people.
So that means here on the Legion project, we have to get through the remaining, 60 issues or so by the end of the year so we can hit the 30th anniversary.
Oh, my God.
That, right? That's like what? That's like more than 4 episodes a month? That's
oh, boy. Yeah, so that's like what, 50? So it went up to 63, didn't it? Issue 63?
Plus annuals.
Oh,
plus
of course. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, you're right. It's 60 plus issues. Oh boy, Peter. I know.
No, just joking.
And it doesn't help when we take a 2 month break talking about this.
I know. I'm sorry. You're such the taskmaster.
I know. I felt really bad. I contacted Peter a couple weeks ago, just trying to plan things because it's really hard to. I don't know how you feel about this, Peter, but I've always felt it's been very hard, even just for my solo stuff, just to record episodes during that month between essentially Thanksgiving and Christmas, New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
So. But I was definitely trying. I tried to get 4 different recording sessions done within a 2.5 week period, and this was one of them.
Wow.
Otherwise, I was going to have to wait until January to do anything. So.
Wow. Yeah.
I know. I think I was a little too ambitious with what I wanted to do, but fortunately, Peter had an opening today as we record.
That's right. Well, then let's just keep going. So the other little bit of news, this is not really news, but if you're watching previews or if you're someone who likes to look at solicits, Doomsday Clock number 9, one of the covers features a Legion flight ring floating in space being hit by what I assume is a drop of blood. So
yeah, I saw that.
I am not caught up on Doomsday Clock, but apparently maybe we'll get the beginnings of another Legion resurgence if it hasn't happened already.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Saturn Girl has made a few short appearances here and there in this series.
Okay, cool. So that's picking up from DC, the DC Rebirth special.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. So, here we are. Legion of Superheroes, issue number 13.
Year 2.
Year number 2. Excited. Really excited.
So, issue number 13, this is titled, If You Think Khunds Are Cuddly, You'll Love The Lythyls. Is that how you pronounce it, Peter? Lythyl or Lythal?
Is it supposed to be a riff on lethal?
Lethals.
Like the word,
there
word
you go.
lethal, you know?
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Yep, I totally have been mispronouncing it in my head all this time. This was done by Paul Levitz, writer. Steve Lytle is our penciler. Larry Malstead, inker. I don't know, John Costanza, letter. I don't know, Peter. It's usually the same names, but that's okay. Carl Gafford's colorist. Karen Berger is editor. The cover is by Lytle and Malstead. Issue 13. It's Legion tryout time, and poor Blok somehow drew the short straw to greet the potential candidates. Mr. Transition, a.k.a. Zerf, moves us from Earth to Lethal, where Timberwolf and Sensei have arrived. Playing against type, Timberwolf isn't the one to start a fight with the guards, which I thought that was interesting. And then we return to the Legion headquarters to find Shrinking Violet flirting with Sunboy. She's no wallflower now. Blok loops Element Lad into Timberwolf's predicament, and on Lethal, I'm still thinking in my head as I get to that word lethal, but anyway, we get the Legion equivalent of an 80s montage fight scene impressing the 3 lethal judges. Leland McCauley proves to be a savvy businessman who has a thing for proteins, and not in the kinky way. Back on Lethal, Riggs and Murtaugh are shown one major secret about Lethal. It spins on a multiversal nexus. Another interesting bit of this issue. Meanwhile, Element Lad has dispatched a team to rescue Timberwolf, and Mon-El shows us that even 1,000 years in the Phantom Zone doesn't curb a judgmental side. Finally, while the Legion may have a code against killing, apparently subterfuge and sucker-punching your foe is okay, but this does allow Timberwolf to fulfill Karate Kid's final request.
Nicely done.
Thank you. This was an interesting issue. I mean, we're still feeling the effects of that opening storyline, the Eye for an Eye storyline. You know, given Karate Kid's death and this subplot that's been brewing for the last. What, he died in issue 4?
Died in issue 4, and Timberwolf was brought to learned about this will in around like issue 9, I think.
Yeah.
8 or 9.
So what? Five or so issues with this brewing in the background. So we finally get the culmination of this. But I don't know, Peter. I don't know how you felt about it, but this was not a particularly good issue for me.
Oh.
The story was fine. I appreciated the point of what they were trying to do. But I felt a lot of it was just a lot of fight scenes. And with a couple, like I said, a couple worthwhile explorations.
Right.
So what did you think about this?
We're going to start year 2 on a very confrontational path.
Okay.
I love this issue. I don't know why. I guess well, first of all, you're right. It wraps up the Timberwolf stuff, which is good. And I knew what it is. I knew what the outcome was, even if I didn't remember the details. So I was like, okay, here it is. Let's read it again. Oh, okay, right. This is that issue. Here we are. I think what I liked about it the most is we've been experiencing these one-off issues that have a ton of subplots. And a lot of times, I think we've both been in unison where sometimes the subplots are stronger than the main plot. And it sounds like that's probably what was going on with you in this issue. But in this issue, for some reason, I liked this journey. I liked this little wrap-up. Part of it has to do, I think, with the way Levitz did Timberwolf's characterization. a big part of it has to do with the sequential nature, the marriage of words and pictures and stories and ideas, and I think Steve Lytle's artwork on this is gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
There's just some really interesting things that I want to point out as we get deeper into it. So I walked away, especially after the ending, which felt it almost felt like reading a Sergeant Rock story or some kind of like Bronze Age horror thing that ends with some kind of like little lesson or morality or whatever, in a positive way. And I felt it was like Paul Levitz just adding a little bit of like a narrative substance to a Legion comic that we don't always get this. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that made it an issue that I read and walked away and going, this is great. I like this. It's kind of like a nice little wrap up of some storylines. Kicks us off into year 2, and and then I was like, I'm sure Eric's gonna like this.
Well, you know, it's not like I hate this issue. I mean, it's I agree with you. It's a well crafted comic book. Mm-hmm. Looks beautiful, of course. I guess I just didn't connect to, other than the bit at the end that we'll get to. Mm-hmm. I didn't really connect with the journey that Timberwolf was on, because it's so emotionally removed mm-hmm. from what they're trying to do with it. It's a lot. Basically, the comic is filled with obstacles, trying to prevent him from accomplishing what Karate Kid asked him to do. But there's I don't feel any, other than Timberwolf feeling obligated to do it because he was asked by his dead comrade. I don't understand what's his motive for doing this beyond that. And maybe that's all it is. And I'm wanting more out of that, and that perhaps that's not fair to the particular issue.
Okay. All right. Well, don't let me sway you. Don't let me try to convert you. I have a couple of thoughts to all that stuff, so maybe we'll hash it out. We'll hash it out. Right. Shall we discuss the covers?
Yes.
I'm just going to throw it out there real quick. I thought they were almost interchangeable
mm-hmm.
in quality, and I don't mean that negatively. I mean, I really liked both of them.
They're very similar.
Very similar, right? Yeah. And I thought they were both beautiful. And if I had to give an edge, I would give it to the Tales book because it has Karate Kid looming in the background, which I love.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But there's something very striking about the red background on the Baxter cover that also makes it stand out. So I'm sort of like, they're both great.
Yeah, So I touched on that red sun background that they have on the Baxter issue. I prefer the Baxter one because I don't know, the pose, the action pose that Timberwolf has here compared to the one in the Tales, which is kind of, I don't know, kind of weird looking. He's kind of jumping out from the. I mean, and he's doing that in both. He's kind of jumping out from the crowd of lethal bad guys. Mm-hmm. But the way that he's constructed on the Baxter issue, he looks a lot more menacing to me.
Yeah,
and I kind of think that's the point,
right,
of these issues. I also touched on the like you said, the background with the sun. I'm like, what? Why this red sun? Other than it's really that red background is really striking when you compare it to the foreground. So that's really good. Mm-hmm. But yes, the Tales cover has that ghostly image of Karate Kid. I thought, well, if they had somehow taken that aspect and put it in the background of the Baxter cover, then done. It's perfect in my mind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I do like that the Tales cover incorporates a few of the characters inside the story, but I feel like the only reason I'm gravitating to that is because I know who the characters are. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if it was on the Baxter run, if Mig and Stegis were on the, who we will meet shortly, if they were on the Baxter run, we wouldn't know because, we didn't read the issue. But a year later, we get the Tales run, and we get the Tales cover, and we're like, oh, right, there's those characters. But that's because I read it a year earlier, If I didn't know the story inside, obviously I wouldn't know who they are. But I do like both of their designs, so that might have been another plus in the Tales cover. But no, I'm a fan of both, and I like that Steve Lightle kept Timberwolf's right forearm on both covers as being all ripped up in the costuming.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Nice little symmetry there.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a spotlight cover for him, that's it's pretty good.
I also just noticed. I don't know how many times I've looked at this cover, but I just realized this just now. On the Baxter cover, apparently Lytle likes studs, because a lot of there's like three characters right next to each other that have all these studs and kind of spiky studs as well on their outfits, going down their arms or on their headgear or whatever. Anyway,
like shorthand to show that they're tough.
Yeah, they're very tough.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing on the Baxter cover I was going to ask you. On Timberwolf's right, our left, and about his waist, that looks like a Gordanian.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
I because of the new Teen Titans, I have a fondness for that alien race. So I thought it was interesting that we see one here in the 30th century.
Yeah, I wonder if we've seen that before. And I'm sure someone who's a deeper Legion fan, who's gone through some of the past, because the Gordanians have been around since I want to say early 80s, even before the new Teen Titans.
I think so, right?
Yeah, Wolfman started to introduce them in Green Lantern or Action or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm not sure if they've ever made a 30th century appearance, but someone might know. And you can tell, I can tell you're doing this, and I'm doing it as well. All background characters, I pour over background.
Yes.
I want to see if there's an Easter egg. I want to see if there's a Marvel character,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead. No, you go
ahead. Just to the left of the Gordanian, there's this helmet and with some pointy ear type things, and I thought, is that a reference to something? So I'm looking for that stuff now.
Right. There is an Easter egg in this issue. The only way I found out about it was because I was going through comicbookdb.com. So we'll get to it when we get to it.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I caught that one, so now I'm intrigued.
I never would have caught it unless it was mentioned. So we're in the same boat there. So, okay, so this is the issue where we finally learn what is in Karate Kid's will. And it wasn't given to us on like one exposition page. It kind of was detailed out throughout the story, and then the ending really punches it and hits it home. So in terms of that, in terms of this buildup of what Karate Kid's will is, why he wanted to do it, maybe why he wanted to do have Timberwolf do it, what did you make of all that?
Well, like I alluded to in my kind of overview thoughts, this was I refer to this in my notes as a zinger, because like I agree with you, they're kind of building up to it in the issue. They make some references, or a reference, I forget now, about Karate Kid's father, and how the implication is, Karate Kid did what he did, joining the Legion, being a hero, in part in reaction to his dad. And so the event that Timberwolf is performing here at the end of the issue, just that's where I talked about the lack of emotional impact. That was a nice emotional, like I said, zinger at the end. So that that was a nice punch of a story there, a story bit or a story beat. So I really like that. That was probably one of the stronger elements for the Timberwolf part of this issue.
I sort of went backwards when I got done with the story, and you find out what it is that truly was the goal, the mission. So the idea is that Karate Kid wanted Timberwolf to come to the planet Lethal, because there's an old legend that said the natives prided themselves on being as hard and unyielding as their sacred stones. And the sacred stones were in this place that they worshipped because it was unbreaking. Nothing could grow there, as he says. Rock so tough, nothing could grow. For if anything did, they would grow soft and crumble. So I risked my skin to plant a little seed. So when I read that, the story kind of unraveled backwards, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to put on Paul Levitt's author hat, and I'm going to say, okay, you're physically you're literally planting a seed in this sacred domain of this hard planet that people go to because they think there are some kind of riches or some kind of oasis. But when you go there, you're either a slave or you're a badass. And the only way you can prove that is through physical prowess, right? That's what the sensei said earlier. And there are these judges that help define your toughness, blah, 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 blah. So the literal mission of planting a seed on this cold, stern, stone planet. And we even see it there on the end panel where this little seedling is starting to hatch. And then I went into a more sort of metatextual level, and I thought, okay, planting a seed. What are we planting a seed? Is it planting a seed in Timberwolf, who up to this point has been mopey and, sad about losing Lightning Lass? He has gone through this will. He has done this mission in a way that maybe was against the way he would do it prior to this series. He might have just gone in all bluster and full force and just kind of been like, rah, I'm going to do this. But it was a little underplayed, and I think he makes mention, or I think some of the letter column people make mention about, it was kind of nice to see that he wasn't all just ragey, and he took his time a little bit. Not so calculated, but he took his time. So then my thought was, okay, what seed has been planted in Timberwolf now because of this?
Mm-hmm. That's what I hope to find out. I hope we get a payoff to that. Right.
And there were a couple of things that I had to question because I don't know the history, but he says something about Karate Kid being his best friend. Why would Karate Kid send him on this mission? What did he see in Timberwolf that he felt Timberwolf needed out of this kind of mission? Not only just because it could have been a mission he never would have returned from, possibly, but Karate Kid saw something in him. And then there was that interesting thing that in the holo video message that Timberwolf sends to Blok, where he says, hey, I'm about to do this, and if I do this, I get 1 billion credits. Imagine what I could do for all those kids out there. I forget the direct wording, but with that kind of money. So I thought, it kind of gives him, it could give him a purpose beyond just the Legion, which is something that he argued with Ayla about, the Legion is his family. It's my family, the Legion. But maybe he does need something more for himself. If he can't get it in Lightning Lass, maybe he needs something else to make him a more grounded character. So that's kind of what I took with that whole seed thing. So I don't. What's your reaction to that?
Oh no, that totally makes sense. In fact, that elevates the story in my mind a bit. But it only works if what you are predicting, we actually get that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a wonderful thing to think about, and some great character depth there, if indeed it pays off.
Right. You don't trust Paul Levitz after a year, Eric?
Well, things. Paul Levitz is notorious for starting these subplots and then sometimes never getting back to them. So
right, he's like DC's version of Chris Claremont.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah,
maybe a little better than Claremont, though.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe we just put a pin on
yes,
his
yes,
development.
Yeah. One of the things you touched on there was this supposed friendship between Karate Kid and Timberwolf, because it's one thing to say it, and on top of that, Timberwolf does honor the request to the point where it's very possible that he would have died trying to fulfill that request. That boy, talk about a deep friendship, a respect that goes beyond mere platitudes, right?
Right.
So that's really cool. But at the same time, the writer brain in me goes, when have we seen those two be friends? And so I start thinking back to previous stories and going, what? This doesn't ring true. But it's also, it doesn't really matter either.
Yeah, and that's just my lack of Legion history. I don't know. And if you're sort of suggesting that that's not really been the case, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could see it in the sense that they are both fighters that have to rely on. Yeah,
that makes total sense. Sure.
Right. They rely on their bodies. Maybe they train together. But I that's all just supposition on my part. I don't know enough. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is one of the nice things about the Legion, though, is that with such a long history and so many characters, that we kind of have to build a headcanon with some of this stuff, because they're just not. They didn't develop characters like that back then. In the 50s and 60s, 70s even. I mean, that's kind of when they started doing things like that. But so I'm okay building that up in my own head, but like I said, at the same time, the other side of my brain's going, but does that work?
Yeah.
Does that really work with what we've seen?
Right. But I mean, no, it's true. I think that's a very good point. I think that's something that I do, especially, is my headcanon is very strong with certain things where it may not always necessarily be supported, but there is some like light evidence here and there that you could make the connection. I'm not a fan of totally fabricating connections, but if there's like a slight connection there, I could see things. One of my ongoing notes for this series is, I think I mentioned before, is Timberwolf sort of his dopic, mopey, clumsy character wasn't on play here, and I'm hoping that that's the end of it then, and that he emerges from it here as we're both sort of mentioning. So.
Well, to touch on that, if you don't mind, both Lightning Lass and Timberwolf had to go on these singular journeys of self-discovery to become more realized characters, people. And it took Timberwolf being kicked in the butt by Ayla to get this started, and then of course with the request by Karate Kid that that was very much something he needed to. He needed more of an external force to get him on that path to begin with.
Right.
Whereas Ayla probably had a lot more, even though there was some external qualities there with her being captured and almost killed a couple times by her brother. But a lot of that was, though, she went off on her own. She initiated it herself to begin with. So she's a much more developed personality, I'll say, than Timberwolf.
No, you're right. And if we look back at that's a great observation. If you look back at that Lightning Lass special, that Spotlight, it was very internal because it was all about her memories of joining the Legion and the family. It was like you said, it was an internal exploration. Yeah, no, that's great. I didn't even think of that connection. That's absolutely true. We've had these two hurt characters who've had a long standing relationship. It makes sense that he would want to give Timberwolf the other half of this. Mm-hmm. So there's something else to look forward to. Are we going to get us another scene between the two of them as kind of like a denouement, a wrap-up of – because remember the first time they were together, they argued, and she said, look, I'm done with you, blah, 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 and she stormed off, leaving him in the cold. Well, maybe now he could come back and see from her perspective, or from his own perspective. I don't know if we get another scene between the two of them, but in my head canon, they do it off panel.
At the very least, yeah, they have to.
It's
inevitable. How can you be on the same team and not, especially as we've seen, they are both growing.
Yeah.
And they would have to have some sort of reconciliation.
Right.
Even if not, getting back together, which right. I'm not abdicating for.
Advocating, yeah.
Advocating for, yeah.
Right. No, I agree. See, it makes me love this issue even more, Eric.
All right.
I have a couple more notes about the whole will thing that I think are important just to put out there. Timberwolf says on page 20, I can see why Karate Kid hated this place, and not just for what it did to his father. Which, if you know Legion lore, maybe that has come up, although I don't know if the planet has been named prior to this. But in the story, it's slowly coming out, right? Like, this is one of those bits of information that I was like, oh. And then on page 22, Timberwolf says, this planet ruined the father of my best friend. So it makes the mission, it makes Karate Kid, maybe that was something Karate Kid he could never attend to. So he needs somebody to attend to it, because otherwise, if you want to go back to the Tales cover where the cover says rest in peace, ? Maybe Karate Kid's soul is not going to rest in peace until his father is redeemed, or at least the planet that caused his father to become a criminal and whatever, until it's rectified, until there's not vengeance, but whatever the correct word is. So I like those little bits of dialogue there.
It's interesting, though, considering what we just talked about inner growth, that Timberwolf expresses this as, or the cause of Karate Kid's father's fall, mm-hmm. for lack of a better word. It's very much externalized. It's lethal. That planet, that society, that culture that did it to Karate Kid's father. Not Karate Kid's father having some sort of agency there. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was an interesting contrast, considering what we just talked about with Timberwolf and how he's implicitly coming to a realization about himself, I think. So he's not thinking in terms, in regards to himself. He's not thinking of internal versus external. But he is looking at the external, mm-hmm. in regards to Karate Kid's father. So I just thought that was an interesting juxtaposition there.
Yeah. And in a very real way, what was also interesting, what I said before about like Timberwolf maybe not going to this plan in the way he would before. Sensei really is the one that kind of leads a lot of the physical stuff.
Right. That was my reference in the synopsis about Timberwolf not starting the fight, which I thought that was really against type.
And is that purposeful? We have to imagine. Is it Sensei making sure that he is protected? But then along the way, Sensei being the teacher, he also is the one to figure out how to beat the one mission the one judge says. Not only do you have to defeat this creature, but you have to tame it in essence. And Sensei says, look in his eyes, and Timberwolf says, he must be trained. So maybe if I can make eye contact now that I've got his attention as something other than dinner, and he just says scat. And he says, what do you know? It worked. And you could even look at that as like being, not only did he figure out the judge's contest, if you want to call it that, but Sensei is showing Timberwolf there are other ways to go about things than just battle.
Mm-hmm. Well, that I think Levitz is showing us that Timberwolf isn't as dumb as perhaps he's been portrayed.
Yeah.
He needed a little bit of a push to get him to that realization, but he came to the realization himself about that creature. Mm-hmm. And there's some other things in this issue that are kind of like that, where he's more than just the dumb jock that he's kind of been portrayed these last 12 or so issues.
Yeah, a broken heart,
and I like that.
A broken heart can crush a man, Eric.
Very true.
Very true. Very true. So it was things like that again, like that. It was nice to see him in that kind of, in that manner, and all stuff that I don't think as a kid I would have ever picked up on, and all stuff now that I'm probably giving more weight than it really is, but I guess that's why we do the podcast.
Yeah,
if I can't pontificate, if I can't extrapolate, then, what fun is it?
Yeah.
Right.
But it was, again, I keep coming, this is just the inconsistency, but you know what? Human emotions are inconsistent and messy and stuff. So at the end there, when we get the reveal about the seed, this is probably just my interpretation. So, and you had said it earlier, but Timberwolf says the very last bit of dialogue in this issue is, "So I risked my skin to plant a little seed." And boy, depending on how you read that line, that could totally change how you see Timberwolf and this outcome. If you're really cynical, and I have to admit, when I first read this, I kind of took a little bit of a cynical view of this. Mm-hmm. That why I almost died to plant a frickin' seed, but that's not at all what I think he's or how he's viewing this.
Right.
But the phrasing, "I risked my skin to plant a little seed." That I don't know. Perhaps if I were editing this, I would suggest maybe rewording a little bit to really drive the point home. But again, that's probably a failing on my part as the reader.
No, I could see that. I could see that interpretation. I think because we know who he is, and it's a hero book, and blah 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 blah. That's what people do for friends. That's what heroes do. I think, and I think he is still Timberwolf, right? So he would maybe word it in that way of like, so I almost died, but I did it.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe he's even taking stock, like, woof, I can't believe I did it, but I did it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are different ways to interpret that, but I don't know that you wanted a whole lot of different ways to interpret that line.
Yeah, okay, I see that. Yeah, from a story structure, yeah. Yeah. I had a few more things that might relate to the whole seed thing. I think an obvious one possibly is what Sensei senses in Mig. So we meet this character, Mig. He's one of the 3 judges on the planet. Really cool design on him. Looks like he's Asian. And from one of the letter columns, from one of the letters, someone mentioned that there was a rumor that there was a new Karate Kid, and I was like, wow, what kind? I don't know, maybe in the Legion Appa or some kind of trade, like a news trade or something. Maybe there was word that a new Karate Kid was coming down the road, but I liked that Sensei took him away after they knocked him out. You know, he carried him. He's all right. He's going to come with us. Maybe he senses a kindred spirit to Karate Kid. Sensei even mentions, you know, if I did it once, maybe I can do it again. So I thought that also is a seed in the character of Mig, what Sensei sees, but also a plot seed. That Paul Levitz is like, I like this character. We're going to keep him around. We're gonna have plans for him. So I thought that was a nice touch.
You know, Sensei feels, you know, not that he failed Karate Kid, but you know, that is, he trained this person to become, in part, to become the hero that he you know, died being. And, you know, that's, in one sense, it's just wasted potential. And, you know, of course, you know, Sensei, I assume, you know, this is headcanon stuff again, but I assume Sensei feels perhaps like a parent to a child if the child dies. You know, he feels that sense of loss. And to encounter another person, perhaps similar, or as he says, I have hope for this one. He is so young. You know, to me, that's a direct correlation to, or direct connection to Karate Kid all those years ago. And so he makes this, I was going to say rash, but not rash, but he just makes this decision to take this guy back with him. Despite the fact that Timberwolf says, you know, what are you doing? The kid grew up on a planet where you get to be bossed by beating people's heads in and you want to take him home? I'm all for the stray pets, but this one's going to be awful hard to train. But I'm really curious. I know from looking at future issues that we see this character again, but my recollection of this character is that he does not appear to be like he's shown here. But that's just because, you know, that comes out of total ignorance because I haven't read much featuring that character. So right. I'm really curious what we will get out of this.
Yeah. So that'll be another thing to add to the keep watch list. This is the character of Mig. Okay. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, just real quick before we do that, though, that whole multiversal nexus.
Oh yeah.
Upon which Lethal spins, and as Mig says, which is the source of its wealth and legends. Wow, that. I hope we're going to come back to this because that is a really potential powerful bit of storytelling there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When I read this issue, you know, and I got the reference to Lethal, I didn't remember it before, and I don't recollect it from other issues in the future that I've read. So I kind of have my doubts that we'll actually touch on this. But I just found it really interesting that we had with the Eye for an Eye storyline, we get that whole other universe or whatever that the villains go to or
attempted to go
yes
to.
Yeah. Exactly. And then we have the Lost Legionnaires trying to find their way home with the controller and all that stuff, and then all those doorways. And Levitz keeps coming back to this idea in various ways, and I'm really curious why. What's he going for with this?
And then here comes the crisis, and he's not going to be able to play with any of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess there you go. That maybe that answers my question. It was something that would have been started, but then because of other external forces, we won't get any resolution to this. So what could have been here?
Yeah. In my reading of it, I went, see, Grant Morrison isn't the only one who just throws out these
multiversal aspects.
Yeah, and they're almost word plays though too. Like you pick one adjective from column A, one device from column B, and one metaphysical concept from column C, and you throw it together, right? And we get this thing, which is brilliant. It's a way to kind of mask what the planet Lethal is really about, or what, but boy, what potential. And why is it in the hands of warlords and maniacs, And
why haven't they done something with it other than enrich themselves, but only on their planet?
Mm-hmm.
When you start to think about it, it kind of breaks down a little bit.
So I think it was just one of those, I have to come up with some kind of aspect for this planet. Why? Because don't they say that in the description of it, right? People come to this planet, let's see. Rumored paradise continues to attract the warped and the foolish.
Yes.
So, not the first time Levitz has put importance on something, but it really is not important to the larger story. But that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like page 9 when we first see Stegis and Gorax and Mig. The design of them, the design of the three of them, they feel very different. I liked Stegis's design. I think he's cool. It's a shame we're never going to see him again, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what a great opportunity here, for a repeating villain to show up. You ruin my planet. You ruin my station. Therefore, I'm gonna enact some sort of vengeance on you. Although we constantly touch on that kind of story. But yeah, I agree. That's a very cool design. Gorax, his tights. I don't know what you call that thing that he's wearing.
Yeah, there is
to
a
cover
name
himself.
For that.
But yeah, that's just okay. Very interesting designs. I agree. I like those character designs a lot. Okay, if you don't mind, I want to jump back to some of the other stuff that's going on with the Legion in this book.
Sure.
We open up with the Legion applicants on page 1 with Blok, and we get Blok in. I think this is the first time we see this new yellow and blue costume that he has on.
We saw it in Who's Who, but this is the first time we see it.
Oh, you're right. Yes.
Yeah.
And last issue was it? I think Timberwolf got his new outfit, which we see extensively in this issue, and he made some passing comment to Blok about maybe he should change up his duds.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go. Here's another design for Blok. He changes his outfits, I think, the most out of all the Legionnaires that I can recall. But anyway, I mean that's just a minor point. But
but I think you were the one who said or we talked about how Steve Lytle has he made designs for a lot of these Legionnaires because he wanted to put his mark on it, right? Most artists when they come in, they we always talk about the Cockrum era or the Grell era, or and this is very much the Lytle era.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's interesting that it's right there on the splash page, larger than life. He's already done a Who's Who entry, and now he gives Blok a full splash page, which is great. And I think the design sense that Lytle has is it just is really growing, and I love that we try to make mention of it, because I think I mentioned before where I sort of brushed Lytle off as just a cover artist and never really read his run consistently from issue to issue. It was always like finding a back issue, another issue that I can read. But it wasn't like I was reading 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would read 7 while I was reading issue, 25, So I like that I'm seeing it build, and the artwork is just beautiful, and I love that costume, and you can tell he might have his favorites. Lytle might have his favorites, and I think Blok is one of them.
Yeah.
So sorry, I interrupted your point.
So a couple things about this first page. We get a bunch of different potential applicants here. You get a Batwoman-like character featured prominently, and there's some others. This is also where I was like poring over these characters and looking in the backgrounds, going, okay, is there anybody here? Am I recognizing anybody? Which other than the reference to Batwoman herself. Including this character has red hair, so it's kind of obvious. That's just a lot of fun to see this. There's a much more interesting point about this, but before I get to that, in the background are all these posters, I guess, 30th century versions of posters of all of the Legionnaires, and I wondered, Peter, what you think about this. Look at the order of the presentation here. You've got Feral Lad in between Wildfire and Lightning Lass. So they've obviously updated Ayla's picture to her outfit now, but they have a dead Legionnaire shown here, and they're not even like in alphabetical order or anything.
Yeah,
I just thought it was weird the way it's just Lytle deciding to put these characters in this order. I'm just really curious about it.
It also continues on page 2. We see Karate Kid and Element Lad and
exactly. Yes.
I don't know if there's. I doubt there's a rhyme or reason. I don't think it matches. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it matches the order in which they joined.
Yeah, I thought about that too. And yeah, it doesn't.
Right, because
as far as I can tell,
you have Invisible Kid 2 right next to Mon-El. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, so
I will say this though. For what we see, Lytle does put them. You see an order to them. So it's not like he's drawn this character here, but then he draws the same character in a different spot. So I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger thing I wanted to touch on was this, or regarding this, is that one of the applicants says, Blok is responding to their enthusiasm. Your enthusiasm is commendable but inappropriate. Accept that all applicants will get a fair opportunity, but we shall do so in our own procedures. He's basically saying, calm down, you'll get your turn. But then one of the aliens says, "Girk, humans only then." To which Blok replies, "The Legion has no prejudices on grounds of species." And then he gets interrupted by Zerf to get us into the main plot. But that whole concept of the Legion being a humans only club, I guess, and considering that we've been shown for a few issues now, R.J. Brand is doing something with the Proteans. I also read in the Tomorrow's Legion Companion, one of the interviews with Steve Lytle, he really kind of pushed Levitz to include more alien looking members. I presume so he could stretch his artistic muscles. But just it makes sense for the 30th century universe that we have, and we have the United Planets. Why are there so many human-looking characters in the Legion? So, and I know we do get a few things like that. I know some of the characters that are coming up. So at least it's not just lip service. They did make an effort to be more inclusive of other species and other ways of seeing characters and telling stories based on that that viewpoint. So I just really dug that part. So it was the first thing in the issue, and I kind of wanted more of that. And so probably to the detriment of the Timberwolf story. But that's just me. It's just I wanted something more with that. I assume we're going to get that coming up.
And it's a direct correlation to a lot of what's been going on in the letter columns, where readers are suggesting that too, where they're constantly saying, "Hey, we need more non-human characters in this book." So I felt like that was Paul Levitt's almost directly answering the readers in story and saying, "Yep, we heard you. We're putting it in." And you brought up all those pictures. I mean, look at all those pictures. They are all human. Even though it's funny that he's talking to Blok, who's not necessarily, he's humanoid, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But so it's very clearly a setup for the membership expansion that's going to happen, a direct relation to what the listeners has been going through. The one guy there, the white guy in that rainbowy costume with the cape, we will see him next issue, I believe.
Okay. I thought he looked familiar. So yeah, now that you say that, I do remember him being on the cover. So that's the next issue is when we actually do get the Legion applicants.
Right.
Focus, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What an interesting design that is, that costume.
And this is the sequence, page 2, where we get that Easter egg that I talked about.
Okay.
If you look... Mm-hmm.
Is it the blonde kid with the glasses?
Yeah.
Okay, what is that about?
So that is a character that shows up in the comic book called Normal Man by Jim Valentino. And it was something that spun out of like the back, a back feature in like a second story in Cerebus, because Dave Sim used to invite young cartoonists to, put their own story in the last few pages or whatever. And then the company, Aardvark Vanheim, published the first couple issues of Normal Man back in like 1980 whatever. It was prior to this. And then I think Jim Valentino has that shadow line imprint over at Image, so he's brought Normal Man back a couple times. So that's who that character is. But I never would have known unless I was just doing a random comic book DB search on this issue and looked at all the characters, and I went, Normal Man? What? And then I was like, oh, there he is. Yeah, that is him, isn't it? So never would have gotten that on my own.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious he sticks out for sure in this crowd. And I noticed him, but I had no idea who he was. But I figured he was somebody, and I thought for sure you would know.
Only because I researched.
Yeah, it looks like I just looked this up. Normal Man had his first appearance in Cerebus number 56 from November 1983.
Well, you brought up the Proteans, and I thought, again, that long list of subplots, we're actually moving one of them a little forward. We kind of get possibly a reason why R.J. Brand is meeting with them. And if it's not his reason, it's Leland McCauley's paranoid version of the events, where Leland McCauley, who apparently this is only his second appearance, he has all these people who are investigating the new president, who come to him with news about, we have all your deals are going through, obviously he has his fingers in a lot of things. And we find out that kind of like Harry Potter and the House Elves, Leland McCauley had a Protean as a pet. And once they either felt the urge to be their own people, to have a place within the United Planets, Leland McCauley is worried that this Protean might know some things about his secrets and his business and all that. So he's panicking, and that's why he has that guy Charon following R.J. Brand. So we got a little more information there in a 2-page sequence that I really liked. All those horizontal panels, those widescreen a lot of current comic books do that format. Maybe they're not so skinny, but where everything is just panel on panel on panel in horizontal fashion, and looked a little different than something Steve Lytle has used before. You know, usually he's kind of like a mix of styles, and I like that. I like that sequence. There was something very claustrophobic, and it was just an interesting storytelling approach.
Mm-hmm. It almost seems like I don't recall what their working situation was between Levitz and Lytle, but there's a lot of dialogue here, and the panel layout really helps to not make the panels busy with a bunch of dialogue because they're stretched out, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was a very good choice on Lytle's part, but he would have to know that there was all this dialogue in the first place. So now I'm curious how they approached their working relationship.
To the point where on the second page, 2 of the panels, I'm fairly certain are just copied, statted in, you know, where it's just that one shot of
yeah.
Machines. Yeah.
It is, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Layla McCauley first appeared in Superboy 214 in January of 1976.
See, I thought I had recognized his name from a previous issue, but I hadn't looked it up. So this is his second appearance?
According to Comic Book DB, it is, but that's a user-driven site, so I don't know if they missed any. But doesn't seem like he's been in. I mean, he's certainly going to make a play later, and he's in the 5 years later. He's in the reboot series, but yeah.
Is that issue that you just mentioned, was that written by Levitz?
I think.
Does it say? Because that would be funny. If Levitz now, 10 or so years later, brings back this character he first introduced as a major player in his plots. Plus, it would be nice to have a counterpoint to R.J. Brand in here.
Right.
Though I can't help, and you can cut this out if you like, Peter, but I can't help but look at him in 2018 eyes and see similarities. Him being a businessman and doing some shady stuff. So,
although his porn stash and all that.
Yeah, that long flowing blonde hair, and either he's a wrestler or he's a porn star. And I love this is just a side thing, but one of his minions, the red faced one, I don't know, I can't tell if that's a mask or if that's a part of him, because he's blue skinned elsewhere, but I just like that look. It's a really interesting, it's kind of a red skull look, but then like I say, he's got his blue skin, but he's really buff, and I don't know, it's a neat look.
Yeah.
Something just a little different than the other humans in this scene.
So Superboy 214 had a story by Jim Shooter and artist Mike Grell. So it was during one of Jim Shooter's later issues, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at least then, Levitz is picking up something that has come before, which is one of the nice things about the Legion lore. All these characters, all this time, and people can come back and touch on these things. I love that about the Legion.
The other tiny little subplot that this actually wasn't a subplot, it's just a spillover from the presidential election issue where Invisible Kid accidentally kills a Khund, and we get here, and you alluded to it in your synopsis, so we should probably talk about it because I had the same reaction. Invisible Kid 2 was cleared. He was cleared of any wrongdoing, of killing the Khund. It was out of self-defense. And it was just Mon-El just sort of brings it up. Or, no, Element Lad just kind of brings it up. So it was like, okay, Well, see, Levitz is always checking off boxes, but it does, and if you want to talk about it, it does give us a really interesting Mon-El section or bit of dialogue. What did you think of that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say, who designs the Legion transport things? This bubble thing with the handles that Mon-El is pulling, I guess? That's just weird. Why not just take a cruiser? Anyway, let's see here.
Page
so, yeah,
16.
Yes. They're talking about using... White Witch is there using her powers to expand Invisible Kid's ability to make them undetectable. And he said, Invisible Kid says, "I'm glad to provide my powers, Mademoiselle." To which Mon-El then says, "I hope you'll learn how to use all your powers, Invisible Kid, before you end up on Legion of Superheroes charges again. I'm glad your self-defense argument got you off, but it doesn't excuse you not knowing your own abilities." And that just grated on me because Mon usually is a little more...
friendly?
Well, friendly, yeah, for sure. But, you know, I would assume a character who spent 1,000 years in the Phantom Zone would be a little, I don't know, more understanding, a little more, or a little less judgmental, a little less cranky. He's coming off as a little cranky.
Yeah,
I think. Go ahead.
I wrote, ouch. I said, wow. And then I tried to think, okay, is it because he's the elder statesman? One of the elder statesmen? You know, Mon-El is always, in my mind, he feels like he's always aloof. He sort of doesn't put himself in the middle of things. He's the Superman character, right? He's almost like the Earth 2 Superman character, where it's like, he's even beyond mythic. And certainly we get that later. But on the other hand, he's right, because I swear there are a bunch of Legion stories where they always say, if you can't control your powers, you can't be part of the Legion.
That's true.
To the point where isn't that the whole thing behind Kid Quantum? Like, he had a belt and he was masquerading as having powers, but then something happened. I'm sort of jumping the timeline here. And that's why he got kicked out, but then his powers were internalized. I don't know. I don't remember who it was, but so it felt like it had precedence to chastise another member about that, but it also came across way harsh.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just flipping through the comic as you were talking. I swear to God there was another bit of dialogue from Mon-El about this whole situation, but I must have just dreamed it or something, or maybe I'm attributing it to him when it was some other character. Maybe that scene with Element Lad. I don't know. I can't find it now, but yeah, I thought there was more to it than that. But still, you know, it was a little bit of dialogue and a bit of attitude from Mon, and it really, really touched a nerve in me for some reason. And then the only other thing I wanted to really touch on here is the scene back in Legion headquarters between Sunboy and Shrinking Violet, which is a very interesting development that I'm hoping we'll be able to touch on in future episodes. But so some of the Legionnaires are shown here. Sunboy and Starboy are playing a 3D version of Dungeons and Dragons, and they specifically call out Dungeons and Dragons, which was, of course, at that time, big. At the time that this issue came out, was that, you know, Dungeons and Dragons was I think pretty, well, I was going to say popular, but it was beyond the zeitgeist of role players that. And it was becoming more known across American culture.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. I always love to see. I mentioned this before, but I always love to see like the 3D monochrome bits of art that we get that Lytle throws in for this kind of stuff. So that's always cool. But you get this, you see that. You see the Dungeons and Dragons scene, Starboy going he about his ability to outplay Sunboy in this game, which I thought was funny. But then we see a scene where Shrinking Violet a panel where Shrinking Violet is behind Sunboy, and she has now draped her arms across him. For some reason, he thinks it's Dream Girl because he says, "Hey, Dream Girl, stop trying to make Starboy jealous. You're interfering with my." And at this point, Violet is now shoving her hand down Sunboy's shirt, and Sunboy has the reaction I think a lot of us did, Violet, and she's giving him this look like, well, you could kind of guess what she's after here. So that's an interesting development. Mm-hmm. I can make some guesses as to what's going on here, but I'd be really curious to find out if that is true.
We've seen Shrinking Violet own her powers, own her place within the Legion, own her new attitude, and I guess that also extends to owning her sexuality.
Yeah,
it is the future after all.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not used to seeing... Well, okay, a couple things. We're not used to seeing Violet behave this way. I mean, in a sexual manner, right? Mm-hmm. Let alone any Legionnaire acting in a sexual manner. I mean, yes, we have pairs. We have boyfriends and girlfriends all over the place in this team, but this is new. At least as far as I recall. It's always been shown... These relationships have always been shown as very... what was the? I had the word innocent. Mm-hmm. Very innocent. They hold hands, so to speak. That's the extent of their sexual relationship that we see on page, of course. So this is a very interesting turn, not only of the characters, but of the decision on the parts of the creators to show a more adult relationship, so to speak.
Right. We sort of saw it with Element Lad and Siobhan.
Oh, that's true.
And in comparison to the new Teen Titans, who got some criticism for showing Dick and Corey in bed,
right.
This is sort of light. And I guess that makes sense because the Legion probably are more... I think the Legion as a concept can cross more demographics maybe than the new Teen Titans did, which was always written kind of more adult in one sense or another. And then my mind always goes, this is a group of 20 plus odd characters, more if you count the supporting cast. You just know they were shacking up left and right.
Right, there's that headcanon again.
Yeah, I mean, they're teenagers, Well,
right.
Now they're probably late teens, early 20s, They're totally banging.
Yes, yeah. They are. But so, yeah, I'm really curious to see if, what comes out of this, not just between the two characters, Shrinking Violet and Sunboy, but, how does that affect the dynamic of the other relationships with these characters? And, I imagine, we've already seen cliques. In fact, that scene that I'm talking about, we see the two couples that we always see together, Mon-El and Shadowlass and Phantom Girl and Ultra Boy. But now we have this different pairing going on. So how, what's going on there? So I'm really curious how this will end up.
Plus, it's always nice to see Sunboy off his game. Literally, off his Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good point.
Game, right? Because he's such a schmo sometimes. He's been kind of a dick. So, I like that, and he hasn't got much play either. So, to be fair, Levitz hasn't really. Maybe he's not one of Levitt's favorite characters, but it's kind of nice to see him get thrown off.
Well, and we just came off of, mostly in the Tales book, a plot involving him and Gigi Cusimano, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he got a bit of a comeuppance there. Mm-hmm. And now I don't know. It's interesting that Levitz is showing Sunboy as kind of a player. It seems like he is defining some of these characters with certain facets that he keeps coming back to.
Right.
Ultra Boy is kind of he's constantly shown as kind of dim-witted, perhaps even more so than Timberwolf. Sunboy is, he's kind of a player with the women. So it's really interesting that he keeps coming back to this stuff. I guess it's shorthand for him and for us as the readers. Oh, this is what this character is about.
Right.
But it's an interesting choice that he would make to show Sunboy in that way, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he just wants to explore different aspects of quote unquote teenage life within the Legion mythos.
I didn't have much else, or I should say I didn't really have. I mean, I had a couple one-off things, but they don't really matter too much. So
that's all I have as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I did notice though that in the letter column for a future issue about this one, that Levitz revealed to us that this issue number 13, received the most positive mail of the series up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume a lot of people agreed with your assessment of this issue more so than my initial reaction to it.
That's because they heard our podcast.
In a timey-wimey sense, right?
Yeah, in that multiversal nexus thing, whatever. Or they're just really big fans of Timberwolf.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what fandom. I don't know who they gravitated to back then. I don't remember. So.
Well, it's funny because Timberwolf was always kind of one of my favorites in the series until he had that facial surgery done. And when they turned him into looking more of like just a typical human male, and they started playing around with his personality, that's when I lost interest in him.
Interesting. Two things I took from the letter column for this issue in issue 18 was about, they said there's a sequel to The Curse, The Curse, scheduled for annual number 2 of the Baxter run. And I didn't look ahead, but I didn't think that actually played out. So that might be something that they thought was going to happen, but I don't remember that happening in annual 2. So
I don't either. Yeah,
we'll have to look for that. And then speaking of seeds, Paul Levitz says when they talk about like story plots and things like that, specifically about certain issues that are coming up, he says there are many times when writers start storylines or plant plot seeds without knowing how they'll work out. It's not the first time he's addressed that as a writer in the letter columns, but I think it's always interesting to point out considering the story structures that he's been using for these past 13 issues. He clearly has a plan, and it's nice to see a writer treat a concept in the long form rather than in the issue by issue form. So
yes.
I'm always a fan of that stuff.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall we move on to Who's Who?
Let's do it. This is Who's Who number 6, which came out also in May, the same month that Legion issue 13. And we have 3 characters that we're going to talk about, potentially 4, that have connections one way or another to the Legion of Superheroes. Starting with one of my favorite concepts that I realized never really lived up to its potential, the Dark Circle.
Yes.
Now, this information on this entry, it's drawn by Dan Jurgens and Carl Kiesel, who they did random issues of the Tales book at this time, so it kind of makes sense. This is spinning out of the last story that happens in the Tales book prior to the reprints of the Baxter run, where we finally get the revelation of who the Dark Circle are, that it's not this wide, encompassing, cult or this dark organization who's made up of all these different planets of the United Planets. It's made up of just 5 people who have cloned themselves over and over again, and who knows what their ultimate goal is. But we see him here, just as we do in the Tales book, and I didn't realize. I thought only a few of them had been named. But when I looked up their first appearance in Adventures 367, we do get a few more names: Gorgoth and Grullig Garkush. We know Antir, the Snake One, from issues of Tales. And in some of those last issues of Tales, Norak is named. He's the one with the skull cap on his head. So what I took away from this entry, is how important that Adventure Comics 367 issue really is. Because it's the first appearance of the Dark Circle. It's also got a controller connection with the Miracle Machine.
Oh, right.
That's where they get their Orange Legion headquarters. And it also has some Karate Kid and Sensei stuff in it. So it's like, boy, if we had to pick like the top 15, I don't know, benchmarks along the way, that sounds like one of them.
Mm-hmm. Now Peter, you said Adventure Comics 367?
367? Is that what it says?
It says 267 in my issue.
Oh, my bad. I think
because I point this out because there's a issue number snafu with Dawnstar that I was going to point out. So who knows what number is correct in this who's who, but yeah, I first encountered the Dark Circle in a reprint. I think it's one of those Legion digests that DC used to put out, and boy, talk about what appeared to be a really menacing organization to the United Planets and the Legion. And then years later, we get, as you say, the stuff going on in the Tales book, and this revelation of this cloning thing. And I don't know about you, Peter, but I kind of lost interest in the Dark Circle. I feel like they kind of watered it down with this whole cloning storyline.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's why I thought, it's not what I want them to be.
Because that whole cloning thing. Because I was reading Tales at the same time as I was reading Tales more so than the Baxter stuff at this time. Well, back then, and so I was really focused on that book, and it was an interesting development in that history, but I don't know. I felt like, so all this time, whenever the Dark Circle the Legion have gone up against the Dark Circle and they've defeated these members, they just didn't unmask them? Because the foot soldiers, they have this great look. They're completely covered from head to toe in their outfit, and it's black and this kind of dark purple or violet color. I mean, it's a very striking with a big black circle, dark circle, of course, on their chest. It's very cool looking, and menacing looking, and I can't imagine that they would not turn these people over to the science police, and someone didn't notice that they all look the same. While it's an interesting plot point that or interesting revelation in the comic itself, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you consider how things would have been, I guess, in continuity.
Right. By the way, it is a misprint. It's not 267. It should be, their first appearance is 367. So
wow, they are really off.
Yeah. So that's 2. Yeah, because I just looked it up, and 367, 267 is from like 1959. So it's not.
Okay.
It's not that, yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Peter, we can't rely on who's who anymore. The series is I'm done with it. It's dead to me. Yes, exactly.
No, there've been mistakes here and there,
Sure.
And they correct them later, but it's a nice image. It is a nice image. Purple has always been my favorite color, so maybe that's why I gravitated towards them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, let's jump to Dawnstar. Let's skip over the one because it's a little more meaty. And as you pointed out, go ahead and talk about the mistake in this one.
Well, yeah. So Dawnstar says the first appearance was Superboy number 225, but I have those issues, and I also was looking at this on Comic Book DB, and they list her first appearance as 226. So I'm like, wait a minute, which one's right? Which one's correct? So I pulled out my issues and flipped through issue 225, and there's no Dawnstar. Not even as I recall. Granted, I didn't pull out my magnifying glass and pour over every panel, but I don't recall her even being like in the background with no dialogue or anything. So 226 is her first appearance.
Right. Really nice image, and they pulled the artist from that issue to draw.
Yes.
Which was nice, James Sherman.
The great James Sherman. I think I've said this before, but I really like Jim Sherman's art on the Legion when he was doing it.
She's gorgeous in that the headshot, the background headshot, really nice.
Yeah, this is a character, back when she was introduced. So that was, I don't know what year that was. It was 70 something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what year that was, but playing off of Native American motifs. It's even part of her backstory that she's an Amarant, a mutant though, born with wings and unique abilities on the planet Starhaven. And I always thought she was a really interesting character that they didn't explore enough.
Mm-hmm.
She has these really cool abilities. Not only does she have wings and can fly, she's Angel from the X-Men in that sense, but her tracking ability and her ability to fly through space unaided.
Yeah,
I always love those two combinations. And while they did play with it, while because Brainy was trying to augment her powers to locate the Lost Legionnaires, they played with it that way, especially in the Tales book. I don't feel like they ever really explored her character other than in how she has relationships with other people, either whether it's Wildfire or the one character in the Tales storyline that she fell in love with. She spends 5 minutes with a guy and they have this connection, right? So that's unfortunate because I think that there's a lot of potential with her personality, what we've seen of it. That's part of the problem, is that we don't really see I don't know if we see a consistent personality from her.
Right.
That's not, like I said, in relationships with other people.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Huge potential or huge lost potential with this character, I think.
Yeah. Created by Paul Levitz and Mike Grell.
Yeah.
My Dawnstar love comes from the 5 years later version of her.
Oh, yeah. That's a different take for sure.
Yeah. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next two are just sort of random. One has a little bit more play than the other, but they have some Legion mentions. Obviously the first one being Darkseid, drawn by Jack Kirby and Greg Theakston. And the blurb here reads, "Through unknown means, Darkseid has appeared in the 30th century to battle the Legion of Superheroes." And then it goes on to talk about the prophecy that he will one day meet his ultimate fate by his son Orion. So they're referencing the Great Darkness Saga. Reference might be a strong word. It's sort of like just a minor footnote, but certainly in terms of the Legion, it's an important story.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps even one of the greatest Legion stories ever.
Very true. I'm always annoyed when people say, I want to read the Legion, what should I read first? And they're like, read Great Darkness Saga. It's like, no, don't. Let them them build to that. Let them learn who the characters are first. My God.
Yeah. See, because that's where I came in right before that.
I'm so jealous. So jealous.
275, I think it was, when I started getting the issues month to month, or tried to anyway. It wasn't that easy back then, kids, to get those issues month to month, unless you had a subscription, and I did not. But yeah, so I got a little bit before that. I got the return of Superboy to the Legion with that story, and then building up into the Great Darkness Saga. So that was perfect for me.
That's great.
And at that time, I didn't even really, I knew who Darkseid was, because I watched the was it the Superpowers, Super Friends, whichever incarnation of the cartoon that he came in on. And so I was familiar with the character, but not having read a whole lot, if hardly anything at all, of him in the comics. And then on top of that, I see him feature prominently in this 30th century story and all the characters involved with the Great Darkness Saga. That's what got me interested in all those Kirby characters from DC. So it's the Legion that started that for me.
Cool.
It is interesting in the powers. You just said that the Great Darkness Saga is kind of a footnote in Darkseid's history, and that totally makes sense for this character. But they do point out that he had other powers in the 30th century besides, the ones that we know about, the Omega Effect and all that stuff, including the ability to generate force bolts from his hands, as well as a force field to levitate and teleport himself, and to control the minds of an entire planet's population psionically. So I thought that was interesting that they pointed that out.
I don't know why I missed that. I missed reading that part. I was so caught up in the first part that I missed that. Nice catch.
And also we should note that they got Jack Kirby with, who's that, Greg? I can't read the... Theakston?
Yep.
Yeah. See, are you, Peter, I forget, do you have the original Who's Who issues? Is that what you're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the printing sometimes of those Who's Who issues were kind of off, and so sometimes some of the text is hard to read, especially the text in red, which is a lot of the art credits in this book. So that was neat that they got Jack Kirby to do that.
Yeah.
I hope they paid him sufficiently.
And then the other mention is in the Despero entry, where at the end of his bio they say he is currently in custody on the planet Takron Galtos, which is a Legion concept, but now showing up in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's ever been that way before in some Justice League issue, but this is right around the Detroit era. He is ready to make his move in that series. He breaks out of the prison in Justice League of America 247. So I thought that was interesting that they used a Legion concept in the 20th century. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't know if it's ever been. I wonder if Takron Galtos has showed up in the Omega Men series or anything like that. But that's my first sort of exposure to a Legion concept like that in the 20th century. So,
yeah, okay. A couple things on that from my perspective. One is, so Takron Galtos is a prison planet, right? So it's lasted 1,000 years.
Yeah,
that's interesting. From an in-continuity standpoint, you'd think maybe they would, it'd be run down or something. I don't. Prisons don't tend to stay pristine over time. But yeah, was this, Peter, remind me, when did Invasion come out?
Oh, not until 88, 87.
Okay,
88,
so yeah, this would have been perhaps one of the first references to a 30th century thing in the 20th century. I mean, I haven't read every DC comic during that time period, but
right.
I did not know about this until you pointed it out about Despero, and Takron Galtos. So, but it was when Invasion occurred where they really kind of doubled down on all of this 30th century stuff.
Yeah.
In the modern time. And I don't know how I feel about that either. I kind of, it's kind of neat, I guess, in a way that they're elevating the Legion to have universal aspects in the DC universe.
Mm-hmm.
That they're touching on it in modern comics. But at the same time, I don't know. It feels like they're, I don't know. I want to say watered down. I already used that phrase, but something doesn't set right with me regarding that. What about you?
I think I like it in the sense that one heroic age has spawned a second heroic age, because we know that, the present DC Comics, that's the heroic age that we read, and we know that DC has the 30th century or the 31st century. But in the middle, they don't ever really talk about there being another kind of heroic age to that level.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the Legion being inspired by whether it's Superboy, whether it's Valor, whoever, so they're inspired by the past. It is kind of interesting that the past should influence the future in more ways than that. And maybe it's just a way to keep readers in the mindset that the Legion doesn't have to be off in a corner, which I think for the longest
That's
time
true.
it was, especially in the 80s,
Well, I think in part that I'm reacting that way because of that, because it's, the Legion's my club.
Yeah.
And here you guys are expanding my club. But that's that's a bad attitude to have. But really I think a large part of that, I'm glad you were, as you were talking about the inspiration, Invasion came out after Crisis, which means that the whole inspiration for the Legion originally is Superboy, who no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe with Invasion, I was feeling like, oh, they're just trying to make up. Yeah, substitute. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, make up for that poor decision. And how it impacted, even though I think we got a pretty good story out of it,
right,
which we will get to eventually. But they kind of ruined the Legion in some aspects because of that. And so Invasion and the whole 30th century elements in the 20th century, I'm keying off of that feeling, yeah, I guess. So apparently, I take these things very seriously.
And then that's it. That's it for Who's Who 6. So we will continue our Who's Who journey next issue, next episode. Mm-hmm. The other thing I have is I've been kind of touching on whenever the Legion show up elsewhere, and they showed up in Crisis number 5, Crisis on Infinite Earths number 5 in this issue. This was the issue where the Earths 1 and 2 are slowly merging, if you know your Crisis. So you can see visions, you can see images of the other Earths, depending on where you're standing. And time is all amuck, and it's all very crazy. And Lois Lane, I think, starts interviewing people from different timelines. And one of them is Grix of SETI Alpha 6, who says, I was touring the Legion headquarters when, say, aren't you Lois Lang? I think I saw your sculpture once. So I thought that was funny. There's a nice little Legion touch there. There's a ton of characters that show up on the Monitor satellite in this great double-page spread by Perez, and you see Legion members, you see Legion sub-members. Polar Boy is there, but he's not in his new costume.
But Blok is.
Blok is, yep. That shows up just like his, yeah. And I thought there were some nice character things, such as everybody's like looking up at Harbinger and Pariah and Alexander Luthor, but Brainiac 5 and Supergirl are looking at each other, which I thought was very sweet of Perez to do that. Lightning Lass is standing near Timberwolf. Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl are together. And there's Bouncing Boy and Duo Damsel. So Perez being very aware of the Legion continuity, which I thought was great.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the issue where Wildcat gets his legs shattered, and the person that discovers that is Ultra Boy. He says, I'm going to call up my Penetravision, and he goes, there's been damage. His legs are shattered. I don't think he'll ever walk again. So Legionnaire was the one to diagnose that. Well, diagnose in quotes.
Yeah.
And the only other thing, which kind of relates back to maybe our larger discussion about the two characters having one final moment, is Lightning Lass and Timberwolf. They're on two different Earths, but they can see each other, and they go up right at the sort of nexus point, and they just touch palms. And it's it's like one of those things that Perez is like, all right, those people who know the Legion are going to know that these two characters are connected some way. Otherwise, if you're just reading and you don't know the Legion, you're probably going, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a real nice touch as well. So, yeah, they got a little bit of play in the Crisis every now and then, which is nice to see.
It was there's a bit of dialogue here from Supergirl. It's Legion headquarters, but there's no Legion here on Earth 2. And I remember when I first read this issue of Crisis, and I was so disappointed that there was, because I always, once I was introduced to the concept of the multiverse, Earth 1 and Earth 2, and you have Superman on both and Batman on both, all these repeated characters, I always kind of wanted to see what the Legion of Earth 2 would be like. And this book, of course, or this issue of Crisis, and of course the result of Crisis, we wouldn't get that anyway. So I've just always been disappointed from something that happened, 35 years ago or whatever.
We would get Legion on Earth 2 in the New 52 series, though.
Yes. Right?
Isn't that how they wrapped that up? I didn't read it, but I remember looking through it and going, is that how they're explaining that?
That's something. While I'm aware of it, I did not actually read those issues, so I did go back and buy those back issues in large part, because of what I'd heard about the whole Earth 1, Earth 2 thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was just more of a throwaway line or just something that was said at the end, but it's not really going to stick. So, yeah. So that's it. That's it for this episode. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
On to the next one.
Yeah, that was fun. Here we go. We're going to start this is our start of year 2. I'm really looking forward to what this has to do. I think Eric, you're on uncharted territory now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right in my wheelhouse. So I'm so looking forward to the next year's worth of discussion. And don't forget about our contest. Send us an email. I want that Legion trade, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to say it. And
but it has to be in Interlac.
Oh,
no,
geez.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. There are no extra points awarded for Interlac entries.
Right.
Maybe. Sorry. Peter, how can they submit those entries to us and send us feedback as well?
They can send to me, Peter at thedailyrios.com, and you?
At longboxreview@gmail.com.
Right. You don't have to send to both. You can send to one or the other. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Pick your favorite and then do that. And then, like I said, when this episode airs, we will determine where the 3-week mark is. That should be enough time to listen and respond. And then we'll go from there.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right, Eric.
Here we go. Long live the Legion Project Podcast. All right, Peter, this has been a wonderful discussion as always.
You bet.
And I want to, since, I don't know, you could cut this out if you want, but since we're talking, I hope you have or had a great holiday season.
You as well. Look forward to more.
All right. Well, I guess we will talk to everyone later.
See ya.
Bye, Peter.
Bye.